She pretended to know nothing while her husband prepared divorce papers to run back to his ex. But she quietly sold and transferred every asset in her name, leaving him bankrupt, shocked, and with no way out. Don't miss Chapter 9. It will shock you. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peters' Stories, your family channel. Today, my heart prays for every woman. May your strength shine like Michelle Obama's grace, your courage rise like Maya Angelou's voice, your fire burn like Rosa Parks' bravery, and your brilliance glow like Oprah Winfrey's wisdom. May you walk with the quiet power of Serena Williams, the resilience of Viola Davis, and the unstoppable dignity of every black queen who carved history with nothing but faith and a fearless heart. I pray the Almighty surrounds you with protection, clothes you in honor, and pours love into your life that never runs dry. May every woman be lifted, cherished, respected, and celebrated, not just today, but every single day. You are the backbone of families, the heartbeat of homes, the miracle that keeps this world standing. Your sacrifices are unseen by many, but never hidden from God. Family. Why don't you comment? I promise from my heart, I will reply to each and every comment you leave for me, if your heart values women like the video. If your love is real, right, I stand with every woman. The champagne bottle felt cold against Tilda Dench's palm as she pushed open the front door, her heart light with the kind of anticipation that comes from planning something perfect. 12 years of marriage deserved celebration, and she'd left work early to surprise Jason with his favorite meal, the honey-glazed salmon she'd learned to make from his grandmother's recipe, the one he always said tasted like home. The house was quiet except for the low murmur of his voice drifting down from upstairs. Tilda smiled, assuming he was on a work call, and made her way to the kitchen to start dinner. She'd just set down the grocery bags when his laughter echoed through the house, deep, genuine, the kind of laugh she hadn't heard from him in months, maybe years. Something in that sound made her pause. It wasn't the polite chuckle he gave clients, or the obligatory laugh he offered when she told him about her day. This was real joy, and it pulled her toward the stairs like a rope around her chest. She found him on their bedroom balcony, phone pressed to his ear, his back to the sliding glass door. The evening sun caught his profile, and for a moment, he looked like the man she'd married. Young, handsome, full of promises. She moved closer, intending to surprise him with a kiss, when his words froze her in place. 2 more months, Sophia. I promise. Once I get half those properties in the divorce, we're set for life. She's so trusting she still thinks I'm working late. Tilda's breath caught in her throat. She stepped back from the doorway, her body moving on instinct, pressing herself against the hallway wall. Her mind tried to make sense of the words, to find some innocent explanation, but there wasn't one. There never was. No, she has no idea, Jason continued, his voice warm with confidence. The lawyer says as long as I act normal, show I contributed to the marriage, I can claim half of everything. Her grandmother's properties, the rentals, all of it. She put them in her name for taxes, but they were improved during our marriage. That's our ticket. Our ticket. Our. Him and Sophia. Tilda's hand found the wall for support. Sophia. His college girlfriend, the one he claimed was just a friend when they reconnected on social media last year, the one whose divorce he'd mentioned casually over dinner, saying he felt bad for her, that she'd always been too kind for her ex-husband. I love you too, Jason said, his voice dropping to a tenderness Tilda couldn't remember him using with her. Just 2 more months of playing husband, and then we're free. We're finally free. The champagne bottle slipped slightly in Tilda's grip, and the small sound it made against her rings seemed deafening. Jason's voice cut off mid-sentence. She heard him turn, heard his footsteps approaching the door. Her heart hammered as she forced herself to move naturally, to walk toward the stairs, as if she'd just arrived, as if she'd heard nothing. "Babe?" Jason called out, his voice suddenly cautious. "That you?" "Just got home," Tilda called back, her voice miraculously steady. "I'm going to start dinner." She descended the stairs with deliberate calm, hearing him move around upstairs, probably checking sightlines, trying to calculate if she'd been close enough to hear. The champagne felt like lead in her hand as she reached the kitchen, her mind strangely calm despite the earthquake happening beneath her feet. He came down 10 minutes later, and she knew from his expression that he'd been testing the acoustics, standing where she'd stood, trying to determine what carried through the house and what didn't. His eyes studied her face with an intensity that hadn't been there in years, searching for cracks in her composure. "Hey, babe," he said, walking into the kitchen and kissing her cheek with the ease of a man who'd just planned her destruction. "You're home early. What's the occasion?" Tilda turned to him, and something in her rearranged itself in that moment. Some fundamental piece of who she was slid into a new position, locked into place with the finality of a vault closing. She smiled. "Our anniversary. I thought I'd make your favorite dinner." His face registered surprise, then guilt so fleeting she might have missed it if she hadn't been looking for it. "That's today? Honey, I'm so sorry. Work has been so crazy I completely forgot." "It's okay," she said, and meant it in a way he'd never understand. "We have all the time in the world." That night she cooked the salmon perfectly. She opened the champagne, poured 2 glasses, and listened to him talk about his day, lies about clients and meetings and deadlines. She nodded in all the right places, asked appropriate questions, and watched him relax into the belief that his secret was safe. But she also noticed things she'd been missing for months, how he angled his phone away from her when checking messages, how he'd started password protecting his laptop, how he volunteered for evening errands with an eagerness that had nothing to do with helpfulness. When he raised his glass and toasted to many more years together, Tilda clinked her glass against his and smiled. She was already calculating something entirely different. He was careful, more careful than she'd given him credit for. This wouldn't be easy. After he fell asleep, she locked herself in the guest bathroom and called her cousin Marcus in Chicago, an attorney who specialized in asset protection. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. "I need to know how to protect everything I own," she said, "and I need to do it without my husband knowing. He's smart, Marcus. He's been planning this carefully." Marcus didn't ask questions. He'd always been smart that way. "How much time do we have?" 2 months, maybe less. And he's already working with a divorce attorney. He knows what he's doing. Then we need to be smarter. How good is his lawyer? I don't know yet, but Jason doesn't do anything halfway. If he's planning this, he's planned it right. Then we start tomorrow. Don't change anything about your routine. Don't let him know you know. And Tilda, be careful. If he's as meticulous as you say, one wrong move, and he'll know you're on to him. Can you do that? Tilda looked at herself in the mirror, her eyes red but dry, her jaw set in a line she'd inherited from her grandmother, the woman who'd built an empire from nothing and told Tilda never to let a man think he was the reason for her success. "I can do that," she said. "I can do whatever it takes." She returned to bed and curled against Jason's back, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. He stirred slightly, reaching back to pat her arm in his sleep, and Tilda closed her eyes. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tonight, she'd let him believe he was still the smartest person in the room. He raised his glass to our future. I smiled and thought about his destruction. Same table, different dreams. Chapter 2. The Mother's Warning. Tilda was in the garden cutting roses when Dorothy Washington's car pulled into the driveway 3 days later, unannounced, and 20 minutes before Jason was due home from work. Jason's mother emerged looking 10 years older than she had at Christmas, her hands twisting the strap of her purse like she was wringing out a dishcloth. "Dorothy," Tilda said, setting down her shears and wiping her hands on her jeans. "What a lovely surprise. Is everything all right?" "Can we talk inside?" Dorothy's voice trembled. "Before Jason gets home." They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Jason had toasted their future while planning its demolition. Tilda poured sweet tea and waited, watching her mother-in-law struggle with words that clearly didn't want to come out. "I saw him," Dorothy finally said, her eyes filling with tears. "Last Tuesday. I was downtown shopping for your birthday present, and I saw Jason having lunch with a woman. They were at that Italian place on 5th Street, the one with the outdoor tables. Tilda's hands remained steady on her glass. Okay. They were holding hands, Tilda, across the table, looking at each other like... Dorothy's voice broke. I asked around, found out who she was. Sophia Reynolds, his old girlfriend from college, the one who broke his heart before he met you. I see. I confronted him last night. He said it was nothing, just catching up with an old friend. But Tilda, I've been married for 40 years. I know what nothing looks like, and that wasn't it. Dorothy reached across the table and gripped Tilda's hand. He's my son, but you're the daughter I always wanted. You deserve to know. You deserve better than this. Tilda felt something crack in her chest, but she kept her face composed. Did you tell him you were coming here? God, no. He'd be furious. He doesn't know I saw him, and he can't know I told you. Please, Tilda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. Tilda squeezed Dorothy's hand, her mind already working through the implications. If Jason was being careful enough to meet Sophia publicly, but indiscreet enough to hold hands where his mother could see, he was either getting sloppy or confident. Neither was good for Tilda. Jason actually mentioned running into her. Said they had coffee to catch up. I didn't realize it was lunch, but I'm sure it was innocent. You know how these things look sometimes. Relief flooded Dorothy's face, followed by uncertainty. You're not upset? I trust my husband, Tilda said, the lie tasting like ash. But thank you for caring enough to tell me. That means more than you know. After Dorothy left, Tilda went upstairs to their bedroom and did what she'd been planning since that night on the balcony. She searched, really searched, but this time she understood she was dealing with someone who'd been careful enough to plan a divorce strategy for months without her noticing. She found nothing obvious. No second phone in his sock drawer, no incriminating papers in his desk. Jason had been meticulous, but Tilda had grown up watching her grandmother negotiate real estate deals with men who underestimated her. She knew that everyone had patterns, weaknesses, places where caution gave way to habit. She checked the phone bill online, their shared account that Jason rarely looked at because he'd always considered finances her thing. There it was, a second line added 4 months ago, buried in the itemized charges. The number was local, and the call log showed daily contact, multiple times per day, always when Jason claimed to be at work or running errands. Tilda took screenshots, sent them to her secure cloud storage, and kept digging. Jason's laptop was password protected now, but she knew his patterns. She waited until he was in the shower the next morning, listened to the water running, and tried the password. Their wedding anniversary. Wrong. His birthday. Wrong. Then she remembered. Jason always said if he ever wrote a novel, he'd title it after his lucky number and the street he grew up on. She typed 7_Maple_Street. The laptop unlocked. Her hands shook as she navigated to his email. He'd been smart enough to create a separate account, but he'd saved the login in his browser. The messages loaded, and Tilda sat on the edge of the bed, reading 2 months of her life, rewritten as someone else's love story. Sophia's emails were breathless and eager. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I'm counting down the hours. Last night was amazing. I forgot what it felt like to be wanted like that. How much longer until she's out of the picture? Jason's responses made Tilda's stomach turn. Soon, baby, I promise. Just have to play the game a little longer. She doesn't suspect anything. Too busy with her little rental properties to notice her husband is gone. You're the only thing that feels real anymore. But it was one exchange that Tilda screenshotted and sent to her personal cloud that truly destroyed her. Sophia. Your wife sounds boring as hell. Can't wait until she's your problem in the past tense. Jason. Trust me, she won't be a problem much longer. 2 months and I'll have what I need from her. Then we're free. Think about it. That beach house you love. It'll be ours. Half of everything she inherited from that grandmother who thought I wasn't good enough for her precious Tilda. Who's not good enough now? Henderson says we have a solid case. She put my name on the beach house insurance, had me handle contractor quotes for the rentals. All of that proves contribution. It's not about what's legally mine, it's about what I can prove I helped build. Tilda felt ice spread through her veins. Henderson, Richard Henderson, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the state. Jason had retained him months ago, and he'd been deliberately establishing a paper trail, getting his name on documents, collecting contractor quotes, creating evidence of his contribution to her properties. She heard the water shut off in the bathroom and moved quickly, closing the laptop and returning it to exactly where it had been. When Jason emerged in his towel, she was at her vanity, calmly applying moisturizer. "Morning," he said, kissing the top of her head. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep, thinking about the property inspection next week. Which property? It was a test. He was checking if she noticed his interest in her business had suddenly increased. Tilda kept her voice casual. "The Maple Street building. Tenant mentioned some water damage." She watched his expression in the mirror, the flash of recognition at the street name, quickly suppressed. He was cataloguing everything she said, building his case piece by piece. "Want me to come with you?" he offered. "Get a look at the damage myself." "That's sweet, but you're so busy with work. I've got it handled." Tilda set the laptop back exactly where she'd found it, her hands surprisingly steady. She went downstairs, opened her laptop, and began documenting everything. Screenshots, dates, times, patterns. Marcus had sent her a secure folder system. She used it methodically, building a case one piece of evidence at a time. When Jason came down for breakfast, she was ready with eggs and coffee and the performance of her life. But now she knew this wouldn't be simple. Jason had been strategic, careful, and backed by one of the best divorce attorneys in the state. He'd been building his case for months, establishing patterns of contribution that could hold up in court. That night, after Jason fell asleep, Tilda did something that would have horrified her a week ago. She initiated intimacy for the first time in 2 months, moving against him with a determination that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with strategy. She needed him confident. She needed him to believe his lies were working. She needed him close enough to destroy. But as she lay awake afterward, Jason's arm heavy across her waist, she realized the truth. He was good at this, better than she'd expected. And if she was going to win, she'd need to be better. His mother chose me over him. His mistress mocked my existence. And Jason? Jason had no idea I'd just become the most dangerous woman in his life. Chapter 3. The Pregnancy Test. The bathroom floor was cold against Tilda's bare feet as she sat with her back against the tub, the pregnancy test resting on her knees like an accusation. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Undeniable. 6 weeks pregnant. She counted backward in her mind to that night after she'd found the emails, the night she'd pulled him close because she needed him unsuspecting, because intimacy was just another tool in the arsenal she was building. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been trying to manipulate him, and her own body had betrayed her instead. Tilda pressed her palms against her eyes and tried to breathe. Downstairs, she could hear Jason moving around the kitchen, probably making coffee before his morning run. The same routine he'd followed for 12 years, as predictable as clockwork. Except now she knew where those runs sometimes ended. At Sophia's apartment across town, where he'd shower and change before coming home smelling like her perfume masked with his cologne. She stood, looked at herself in the mirror, and tried to see this as anything other than a catastrophe. A baby. Their baby. The family she'd dreamed about when they first got married, when she still believed in the man who'd promised her forever. But that man didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had. Worse, she knew what Jason would do with this information. A pregnancy would give him leverage, proof of ongoing marital relations, emotional ammunition to paint her as unstable if she filed first, potential grounds to delay proceedings or claim reconciliation attempts. Henderson would use it brilliantly. She could already hear the arguments. My client remained committed to the marriage even after his wife's erratic behavior, even attempting to start a family. Tilda descended the stairs with the test wrapped in tissue and hidden in her pocket. Jason was at the counter in his running gear, scrolling through his phone, probably texting Sophia about their lunch plans or their future in the beach house he planned to steal from her. "Hey," he said without looking up, "I'm heading out early. Got a long day ahead." "Jason, wait." The words came out before she could stop them. "I need to tell you something." He looked up, and for a moment, Tilda saw a flash of the boy who'd proposed to her on a bridge in Paris, who'd told her she was the only future he wanted to see. Then his phone buzzed in his hand, and his eyes flickered down to it with poorly concealed eagerness. "Can it wait? I really need to get this run in before work. I'm pregnant." The phone clattered onto the counter. Jason's face went through a journey, shock that bleached his tan, then something that looked like trapped panic, followed by calculations so swift she almost missed it, then a smile so forced it looked like a grimace. "What? Are you sure?" 6 weeks. I took 3 tests, all positive." He moved toward her mechanically, his arms coming around her shoulders in an embrace that felt like a cage. Over his shoulder, she saw his phone screen light up with a text from an unsaved number. "Did you tell her yet? I can't keep waiting." Wow, that's big news. We should talk about this." His voice had that careful quality she'd learned to recognize, the tone he used when he was thinking 3 moves ahead. "I thought you'd be happy." She pulled back to look at his face, watching the calculations happening behind his eyes. "We've talked about having children." "We have, of course. It's just unexpected, that's all. This changes things. The timing is—" He caught himself. "When I get back from my trip next week, we'll sit down and really discuss everything, figure out our next steps. This is important, Tilda. We need to do this right." Trip. Right. The conference in Miami that Sophia had mentioned in the emails, the one where they'd booked adjoining hotel rooms, the one he was taking while knowing his wife was pregnant. "Okay," Tilda said softly. "We'll talk when you get back." He kissed her forehead and left for his run, and Tilda stood in the kitchen with her hand on her still flat stomach, feeling the weight of an impossible choice settling over her. She called Marcus immediately. "He's going to use this," she said, without preamble. "The pregnancy. Henderson will use it to delay everything, to make me look unstable if I file first, to claim Jason was trying to salvage the marriage." "You're right," Marcus said grimly. "It's actually a smart play on their part. Did you suspect he might—" "No. This is my mistake. I got too close, thought I needed to keep him convinced. Now I'm pregnant with his baby while he's planning to rob me blind." "What do you want to do?" Tilda stared out the kitchen window at the roses she'd planted when they first bought this house, back when she thought they were building a life together. "I need options. All of them. And Marcus, I need to know if a pregnancy affects the prenup. Give me 2 hours." The phone call came 90 minutes later from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Tilda Washington?" The voice was female, smooth, laced with venom disguised as concern. "This is Tilda. This is Sophia Reynolds. I thought you should know that Jason and I are together. Have been for months. He's just too kind to hurt you himself, so I'm doing it for him. Do the right thing and let him go. Don't make this harder than it has to be. And don't try to trap him with a baby. He told me what you're planning." Tilda's grip tightened on the phone, so Jason had already weaponized the pregnancy, framing it to Sophia as Tilda's desperate attempt to save the marriage. Every muscle in her body wanted to scream, to rage, to tell this woman exactly what she thought of someone who helped a married man plan to rob his wife. Instead, she kept her voice cool as winter. "He mentioned you, said you were persistent. That's sweet, in a desperate kind of way. Good luck with that." "Excuse me?" "Jason tells me a lot of things, Sophia. He always has. 12 years of pillow talk adds up. So when he tells you he's leaving me, when he promises you beach houses and futures and freedom, Remember that he's been promising me the same things for over a decade. We'll see which one of us he's lying to. And Sophia, the pregnancy he told you about? Ask him when it happened. Then ask yourself why a man planning to leave his wife would sleep with her 6 weeks ago." Tilda hung up before Sophia could respond, her heart hammering. It was a bigger risk than she'd planned, showing more of her hand. But she needed Sophia uncertain, needed her to push Jason harder, needed him to make mistakes. And she'd planted a seed of doubt that would fester. Marcus called back with news. "The pregnancy doesn't affect the prenup. Your assets remain separate regardless. But Tilda, if you're pregnant, you need to make a decision quickly, before he files, before this becomes ammunition." That evening, Tilda sat in her car outside the clinic, her appointment confirmation on the passenger seat. A pregnancy would complicate everything. It would give Jason ammunition, would tie her to him in ways that transcended property and money. It would mean bringing a child into a war zone where its existence was a weapon before it even drew breath. She thought about her grandmother, who'd raised Tilda alone after her own husband abandoned them, who'd built a real estate empire one property at a time while pregnant with Tilda's mother, who'd taught her that strength wasn't about what you endured, but about what you refused to tolerate. "Some choices break you," her grandmother had said once, "and some choices save you. Don't ever let anyone convince you that the two are the same thing." Tilda walked into the clinic with her head high. She made her choice. She chose herself. 3 days later, when Jason returned from his conference with a gift bag from a Miami beach shop and stories about boring meetings, Tilda was waiting for him in the living room. She watched him carefully as he entered, seeing how his eyes swept the space before landing on her, checking for signs of disturbance, for evidence that she'd been anything other than the waiting wife. "How was the trip?" she asked. "Long, exhausting. Missed you." He set down his luggage and moved to kiss her, but she stood up, putting distance between them. "I need to tell you something, about the pregnancy." His face went carefully neutral, but she saw his shoulders relax slightly. He'd been worried about this conversation, about what she might have discovered while he was gone. "Okay. I'm not pregnant anymore." She watched him process this, watched relief flicker across his features before he caught it and replaced it with concern. "What happened? Are you all right? Did you—" "I made a choice. It wasn't the right time. You said we needed to talk, to figure things out, so I figured them out." Jason sat down heavily on the couch, and Tilda couldn't tell if his emotion was real or performed. But she saw the way his hand twitched toward his phone, the way he was already composing the message he'd send to Sophia or Henderson. "I would have supported whatever you decided. You know that." "Do I?" She tilted her head, studying him. "I'm not sure what I know anymore, Jason. But I know this. I'm not bringing a child into uncertainty. When I become a mother, it'll be because I'm absolutely sure of the life I'm offering. We're not there yet. We could be. We could get there together." "Could we?" She let the question hang in the air between them like smoke. "Or are you already somewhere else?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm tired. It means I'm going to bed. It means I think we both need to figure out what we really want from this marriage." She left him sitting on the couch, and as she climbed the stairs, she heard his phone buzz. She knew without looking that it was Sophia, demanding to know how the confession went, whether he was finally free. But she also knew she'd bought herself time. The pregnancy had been Henderson's ace. Now it was gone, and they'd have to rebuild their strategy. Tilda lay in the guest room that night, her hand on her flat stomach, and felt nothing but cold relief. She'd eliminated their weapon. Now the war could truly begin. "I chose myself over the life we could have created. Some women would judge me. I didn't care. I was done being chosen. Last." Chapter 4. The Sisters' Betrayal. Tilda's younger sister Renee showed up at midnight on a Wednesday, drunk enough that she could barely stand on the front porch. She was crying in that ugly, hiccuping way that meant something was deeply, irreparably wrong. "I'm so sorry." Renee sobbed as Tilda pulled her inside and guided her to the couch. "I'm so sorry, Tilda. I didn't know what else to do. I was so desperate and he was so convincing and I thought—" "Slow down." Tilda brought her sister water and sat beside her, dread pooling in her stomach. "What happened? Who was convincing?" "Jason." Renee's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the glass. "He approached me 3 months ago. Said he was planning a surprise for your anniversary, wanted to know about Grandma's properties, which ones you inherited, what they're worth, how the trusts are structured. He said he wanted to do something special, maybe buy out one of the properties to turn into a family home." Tilda's blood went cold. "What did you tell him?" "Everything." Renee's voice cracked. "I gave him everything. The property deeds, the trust documents Grandma left, the LLC structures. And he gave me money. Said it was to help with my rent. That family helps family, but I know what it was. He paid me for information about you, and I took it because I was 2 months behind on rent and about to lose my apartment." The betrayal cut deeper than Jason's because it was wrapped in need and desperation and the complicated love between sisters who'd survived their own difficult childhood together. Tilda sat back against the couch, staring at the ceiling, while Renee cried beside her. This explained so much: how Jason knew exactly which properties to target, how Henderson had built such a specific case. They'd had inside information all along. "How much did he give you?" Tilda asked quietly. $3,000. He said it was a loan, but he never asked me to pay it back. He never even mentioned it again, until last week." "What happened last week?" "He called me. Asked if you'd talked about selling any properties, if you'd mentioned changing the trusts. Wanted to know if you suspected anything. He said he needed to know because he was finalizing the anniversary surprise and didn't want to duplicate anything you were planning." Renee's face crumpled. That's when I realized he wasn't planning an anniversary surprise. He's planning something else, something bad, and I helped him. Tilda stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Normal people sleeping through normal nights while her world detonated in slow motion. She felt Renee's eyes on her back, desperate for forgiveness, for understanding, for some sign that this was fixable. "Did you tell him anything last week?" Tilda's voice was flat, emotionless. "No, I said I didn't know, that you don't really talk to me about your business stuff. But Tilda," he kept pushing, kept asking questions. "And then today, he called again. Said he heard you sold the beach house and wanted to know why, wanted to know if there were financial problems, if maybe you needed help. That's when I knew for sure something was wrong. That's when I came here." Tilda turned to face her sister, and Renee flinched at whatever she saw in Tilda's expression. $3,000. That's what your sister's trust was worth to you. $3,000, and you gave a man who's planning to destroy me everything he needed to do it. I didn't know. You didn't ask." Tilda's voice was sharp now, the anger finally breaking through the numbness. "You didn't think it was strange that your brother-in-law was asking you for financial information behind my back. You didn't wonder why he'd pay you $3,000 for documents he could have just asked me for if his intentions were good. I was desperate. I was going to be evicted. I had nowhere else to turn." "You had me!" The words came out louder than Tilda intended. "You could have come to me. You could have asked for help instead of selling me out to the man who's been planning to rob me blind. I'm your sister, Renee. I've always been there for you, always. And the first time things got hard, you chose $3,000 over 12 years of me having your back." Renee was sobbing harder now, her whole body shaking. "I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. Please, Tilda, I can't lose you. You're all I have." "You're all you have?" Tilda laughed, a bitter sound. "Where was that loyalty when Jason was waving cash in your face? Where was that family feeling when you were copying Grandma's trust documents and handing them to a man who's been planning this for months?" "I didn't know it would hurt you. He made it sound so innocent, so normal." "That's what predators do, Renee. They make exploitation sound like help. They dress up manipulation as concern. And you fell for it because you wanted to believe that someone would save you without you having to ask for saving. Tilda moved back to the couch but didn't sit down. She stood over her sister, and Renee looked small and broken and young in a way that twisted something in Tilda's chest despite her anger. "Here's what's going to happen," Tilda said, her voice steady now. "You're going to tell me every conversation you had with Jason, every question he asked, every document you showed him, every single detail you can remember. And then you're going to leave and you're going to think very hard about whether you want to be the kind of person who sells out her sister for rent money. I'll tell you everything, but please, Tilda, don't shut me out. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love you. You have to know that. Love isn't what you feel, Renee. It's what you do, and what you did was betray me." Tilda sat down finally, pulled out her phone to take notes. "Start talking. I want dates, times, exact wording of what he asked, all of it." They stayed up until dawn, Renee recounting every detail she could remember through tears and apologies that Tilda didn't acknowledge. By the time the sun came up, Tilda had a complete picture of Jason's strategy, and a timeline that showed he'd been planning this divorce for at least 4 months, possibly longer. When Renee had told her everything, Tilda walked her to the door. Her sister looked at her with desperate hope. "What happens now? Can we?" "I don't know." Tilda's voice was tired, empty. "I need time to think, time to figure out if I can trust you again, time to decide if family means anything when it can be bought for $3,000. How do I fix this? Tell me what to do and I'll do it." "You can't fix it. That's the point. You can't unbetray someone. You can't take back the information you gave him. The best you can do is live with what you did and hope that eventually I decide you're worth forgiving. But Renee, don't call me, don't text me, don't show up here looking for absolution. If I decide to let you back in, I'll let you know. Until then, stay away." She closed the door on her sister's stricken face and stood in the quiet house feeling like she'd lost 2 people in one night, her husband and her sister, both to greed disguised as need. At 7 in the morning she called Marcus. He has everything: property values, trust structures, maintenance records. "He got it from my sister 4 months ago." Marcus swore softly. "That complicates things, but Tilda, it also gives us timeline evidence. 4 months of planning proves premeditation. We can use this." "How quickly can I move on the properties he specifically targeted?" "How quickly do you need to?" "Today, tomorrow at the latest. I need them gone before he can claim any interest." By noon, she'd accepted an offer on the beach house, $30,000 less than market value, but it was cash and it closed in 2 weeks. The Maple Street property had interested buyers by the afternoon. Each sale would close within 30 days, eliminating Jason's primary targets. But all day, Tilda's phone buzzed with texts from Renee. "Please talk to me. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. Don't shut me out." Each message was a small knife, and by evening, Tilda turned off her phone entirely. That night, when Jason came home, he found Tilda in the kitchen preparing dinner as if nothing had changed. She watched him carefully, looking for signs that he knew about Renee's confession, but his expression was merely curious about her quiet mood. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine, just tired. Long day dealing with property issues." "Which property?" It was a test. He was checking if she noticed his interest had suddenly increased. "The Maple Street building. Thinking about selling it, actually. The property taxes keep going up." She watched him process this, watched calculation flash behind his eyes before he smoothed it away. "That's a big decision. Want to talk it through?" "Not really. It's my property, my choice. But thanks for the concern." He tried a different angle. "Has Renee called you lately? I ran into her last week and she seemed stressed." Tilda's hands tightened on the knife she was using to chop vegetables, but she kept her voice casual. "Renee's always stressed. Why do you ask?" "No reason. Just seemed like she needed help. You know how she gets." "I do know how she gets." Tilda met his eyes directly. "She gets desperate, and desperate people make bad choices, don't they, Jason?" Something flickered in his expression, uncertainty, maybe suspicion, but he let it go. I guess they do. After he went upstairs, Tilda's phone buzzed again. Another text from Renee. I told him I don't know anything about your properties. He called me again today and I lied for you. I'm trying to fix this. Please believe me. Tilda stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, Don't do this for me. Do it because it's right. If you want to earn trust back, it starts with doing the right thing when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when I'm not there to see it. That's how you prove you've changed. She sent the message and turned off her phone again. Forgiveness, she thought, wasn't something you gave all at once. It was something earned back piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day. And Renee had a lot of pieces to earn back, but at least now she was trying. At least now she'd chosen truth over Jason's money. It was a start. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a start. Jason used Renee's desperation against Tilda, so Tilda showed her sister what betrayal actually costs. Redemption isn't given, it's earned, one painful choice at a time. Chapter 5. The Lawyer's Office. Jason's insistence that they see a financial planner had been building for a week, wrapped in concern that might have fooled her once. With the beach house sold and some of your properties on the market, we need to get organized, he'd said over breakfast. I found someone great downtown, specializes in marital assets and portfolio management. Just one meeting, okay? Tilda had agreed with the kind of smile that said she suspected nothing. They drove separately. She had errands to run afterward, she'd explained. In reality, she had Marcus on speed dial and a recording app ready on her phone, though she knew recordings made without consent weren't admissible in court. Still, having a record for her own reference could be invaluable. The office building was new, all glass and steel in the financial district. Jason held the door for her, his hand on the small of her back, and Tilda let him guide her to the elevator with the solicitousness of a man leading his wife to slaughter. In the elevator, she noticed his jaw was tight, his shoulders tense, in a way that suggested he was preparing for something. They stepped into a conference room on the 14th floor, and Tilda knew immediately that something was wrong. The man waiting wasn't wearing the casual business attire she'd expect from a financial planner. He wore a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his leather portfolio had the embossed logo of Henderson and Associates, one of the most aggressive divorce firms in the state. Tilda let surprise register on her face, genuine surprise that Jason had moved this quickly, that he'd decided confrontation was the better strategy. She'd expected him to file papers first, to maintain the element of surprise. Mrs. Washington, the man said, standing to shake her hand with the kind of sympathy that made Tilda's skin crawl. Thank you for coming. I'm Richard Henderson. I believe you know my client, Mr. Washington. Jason sat down at the head of the table, and the mask he'd been wearing for months slipped completely. His expression was cool, professional, nothing like the concerned husband who'd driven here with her. This was a stranger, and Tilda realized with crystal clarity that she'd been married to a stranger for years. Jason, what's going on? She let her voice shake, let confusion and hurt color her words while her mind catalogued every detail of the room, every paper visible in Henderson's open portfolio. I think you know, Tilda. Our marriage isn't working. It hasn't been working for a long time. I've tried, but I can't keep pretending. Henderson slid a folder across the table with practiced efficiency. These are preliminary divorce documents. We wanted to meet to discuss the asset division before formal filing. Given the complexity of the marital estate and Mr. Washington's substantial contributions during the marriage, we felt a preliminary discussion might facilitate a smoother resolution. Tilda opened the folder with trembling hands that weren't entirely an act. The documents were thorough. Henderson had indeed spent months preparing. Property addresses, acquisition dates, improvements made during the marriage, and Jason's alleged contributions itemized with damning precision. You're divorcing me? Tilda's hand went to her throat. I don't understand. We just talked about having a baby, about our future. That's exactly my point. Jason's voice was measured, rehearsed. She could almost see Henderson's coaching in the careful way he modulated his tone. You made a unilateral decision about the pregnancy without consulting me. You sold the beach house without discussion. You're treating this marriage like you're still single, and I can't live like that anymore. I've been patient. I've tried to support your independence, but there's a difference between independence and exclusion. It was a good argument, well crafted. Henderson had earned his reputation. The attorney continued as if Jason hadn't spoken, his presentation clearly rehearsed. The properties in question, the 3 rental units downtown, the commercial space on Maple Street, and the investment account containing approximately $400,000 were all improved or contributed to during the marriage. Mr. Washington coordinated contractor work, reviewed vendor quotes, assisted with tenant management, and participated in financial decisions regarding these assets. While we acknowledge the inheritance factor, we're proposing a 60-40 split in Mrs. Washington's favor, given that Mr. Washington's contributions merit equitable distribution under state law. Tilda listened to all of this with mounting horror that wasn't entirely performative. Henderson was good. His case was built on half-truths and strategic omissions that would be difficult to disprove without extensive documentation. Jason had been smart, leaving his fingerprints on just enough transactions to argue involvement without actually contributing capital or labor. Then, she pulled her own folder from her purse and slid it across the table with enough force that it hit Henderson's coffee cup. You want to talk about assets? Let's talk about them. She opened the folder to reveal printed emails, bank statements, photographs, and call logs. Sophia's face smiled up from several of the photos, Jason's arm around her waist, his lips on her neck, his hand on her thigh under a restaurant table. These are emails between my husband and his girlfriend, Sophia Reynolds, discussing their plans to divorce me and take half of my inheritance. These are call logs from Jason's second phone line, the one he added to our family plan 4 months ago and thought I wouldn't notice. These are hotel receipts from his business trips that match up with her credit card statements from the same hotels, same dates, sometimes the same rooms. These are photographs from social media that someone very helpfully sent me, showing them together at restaurants, bars, and her apartment building. Henderson's face went pale, but to his credit, he recovered quickly. Mrs. Washington, while allegations of infidelity are certainly relevant to the emotional aspects of divorce, they don't fundamentally alter the asset division equation in this state. We have a no-fault divorce system that— I'm not finished. Tilda pulled out more documents. Here's a timeline showing that Jason began gathering information about my properties 4 months ago, obtained financial records through fraudulent means by paying my sister for confidential information, and coordinated with your office before ever discussing marital problems with me. Here's documentation showing that every contribution he claims to have made was actually work performed and paid for by professional contractors I hired. And here's the prenuptial agreement he signed 12 years ago, which I'm sure you've reviewed, Mr. Henderson, specifically stating that inherited assets remain separate property regardless of marriage length or improvements made during marriage. She stood up, gathering her folder. Here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to pretend this is about my independence or my unilateral decisions. We're not going to act like Jason is an injured party who deserves compensation for tolerating a difficult wife, and we're definitely not going to discuss giving him $1 of the inheritance he's been systematically plotting to steal. Jason shot to his feet, his professional mask cracking. How did you know about Renee? Because unlike you, when I discovered my sister was in trouble, I helped her instead of exploiting her. She told me everything, Jason. Every question you asked, every document you copied, every piece of your pathetic little scheme. Tilda turned to Henderson. My attorney will be in touch with formal responses to any filing. He's going to be very interested in the timeline of your consultations with Mr. Washington and whether you advised him to establish false evidence of property contribution. Henderson held up his hands, and for the first time Tilda saw genuine concern in his eyes. This was a complication he hadn't anticipated. Mrs. Washington, I can assure you that any advice given to my client was within ethical bounds. If there are allegations of fraud or evidence tampering, that's certainly something to address through proper channels, but threatening language isn't. I'm not threatening anything. I'm stating facts. Fact 1. Everything Jason wants to claim in this divorce is solely owned by me, inherited before our marriage or purchased with inherited funds. Fact 2. Every property he claims to have improved was maintained by professional contractors I paid for, with receipts and documentation going back years. Fact 3. The prenuptial agreement he signed specifically states that inherited assets remain separate property, regardless of marriage length. Fact 4. Jason began planning this divorce at least 4 months ago, coordinated evidence gathering through fraudulent means, and maintained an extramarital relationship throughout the planning phase. This isn't a divorce. It's an attempted theft disguised as marital dissolution. She moved toward the door, then turned back one more time. Oh, and Mr. Henderson, you might want to ask your client about the pregnancy he told Sophia Reynolds was a trap. Ask him how he explained sleeping with his wife while actively planning to divorce her. Ask him if he disclosed that timeline to you when building your case about my unilateral decision to terminate the pregnancy. She left the room, hearing Henderson's voice rise in angry questions behind her. In the hallway, she allowed herself one shaky breath before heading toward the elevator. In the parking garage, Jason caught her arm hard enough to leave marks, spinning her around with a fury that might have frightened her if she hadn't been expecting it. Violence was often the last resort of men who'd run out of strategic options. "You think you're so smart," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "Those properties mean nothing if I destroy your reputation. Everyone will know what kind of cold woman terminates a pregnancy to spite her husband. Your family, your friends, your tenants, your business associates, everyone will know. Good luck maintaining rental properties when everyone in this city knows you're heartless enough to abort your own child out of vindictiveness." Tilda looked down at where his fingers dug into her arm, then back up at his face. "Go ahead. Tell everyone. Tell them why I did it. Tell them about Sophia. Tell them about the 4 months you spent planning to rob me while I thought we were building a family. Tell your mother who you've been spending your evenings with while she thought you were working late. Tell everyone at your office why you got suspended after the gala incident. Tell the world your version of events, Jason. But remember, I have documentation, emails, call logs, bank statements, testimony from my sister about the information you bought from her. And I have Richard Henderson on record admitting you've been his client for months. So go ahead. Let's see who they believe when all the evidence comes out." She pulled her arm free, and Jason seemed to realize what he'd done. In a parking garage with security cameras, he'd just assaulted his wife while in the middle of divorce proceedings. Henderson would be furious. "Tilda, wait. I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. You meant all of it. That's why you planned it so carefully. That's why you spent months building your case and charming Sophia and paying my sister for information. You meant every bit of it, Jason. You just didn't mean to get caught." She walked to her car, her heels clicking on the concrete with the rhythm of a victory march. Behind her, Jason stood frozen in the fluorescent lighting, and Tilda wondered if this was the moment he finally understood the difference between a victim and a woman who'd simply been waiting for the right moment to strike. He thought he was trapping me in that office. Instead, I showed him every exit was locked, and I held the only key. Chapter 6. The Public Humiliation. The invitation to Jason's company's annual gala had arrived 3 weeks ago, back when Jason still thought Tilda was oblivious to his plans. He'd been casual about it, mentioning she didn't need to attend if she didn't want to, that these things were boring, that he could represent them both without issue. Then, after the disastrous lawyer meeting, he'd tried to uninvite her, claiming the event had been cancelled. Tilda had called his office to confirm. The gala was very much happening. Jason was just desperate to keep her away. 2 days before the event, Tilda stood in front of her closet selecting a dress with the calculation of someone choosing armor for battle. She settled on deep emerald silk, the one that made her skin glow, the one Jason had always said made her look untouchable. When Jason saw her preparing for the gala, his face went ashen. "I thought you weren't coming," he said from the bedroom doorway. "Why wouldn't I? It's important to you. We may be getting divorced, but we're still married right now. People will talk if I'm not there. She smiled at him in the mirror as she fastened her grandmother's diamond earrings. Besides, I want to support you. Show everyone that whatever problems we're having, I'm still your wife. The threat in her words was unmistakable. Jason's jaw clenched as he processed the implications. If she attended, she could control the narrative. She could reveal as much or as little as she wanted to his colleagues, his boss, his professional network, and there was nothing he could do to stop her without making everything worse. Tilda, please, let's talk about this. We have 10 minutes before we need to leave. Traffic downtown will be terrible this time of night. Ready? The ride downtown was silent, except for the radio playing soft jazz. Jason's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, his jaw set in that way that meant he was running through scenarios, trying to predict her next move. She'd deliberately kept him off balance since the lawyer's office, alternating between icy silence and artificial politeness that left him guessing about her intentions. The gala was held in the ballroom of the Preston Hotel, all chandeliers and marble floors, and women in gowns that cost more than some people's cars. Jason's company always went extravagant for their annual celebration, and tonight's theme was black and gold, appropriately dramatic for what Tilda had planned. They'd been inside for maybe 20 minutes, Jason making strained rounds and introducing her to colleagues with forced politeness, when Tilda noticed him go rigid beside her. She followed his gaze to the entrance and saw exactly what had drained the color from his face. Sophia Reynolds stood in the doorway in a red dress that was just slightly too revealing for the event, her eyes scanning the crowd with the desperate intensity of someone looking for one specific person. She was alone, swaying slightly, and even from across the room, Tilda could tell she'd been drinking. "Oh, God," Jason breathed. "What is she doing here?" "You didn't know she was coming." Tilda watched his face carefully, and for once, his panic looked entirely genuine. "No. God, no. I told her to stay away. I told her this was the worst possible—" He pulled out his phone, checking messages with shaking hands. "She's been calling me all day. I didn't answer. I thought she'd give up." But Sophia had spotted him. Her face transformed from desperate searching to something like relief mixed with fury, and she started making her way through the crowd toward them with single-minded purpose that made nearby conversations pause. People were already noticing, a woman alone, slightly drunk, heading straight for a married colleague with unmistakable intention. "Jason," Sophia's voice cut across the space between them, too loud, drawing more attention. "You've been ignoring my calls. We need to talk. Right now." Jason moved to intercept her, his voice low and urgent as he tried to guide her away from Tilda, away from his colleagues, away from the disaster unfolding in real time. "Sophia, not here. This isn't— You shouldn't be here. Don't tell me what I should do." Her voice rose, and now everyone nearby had stopped pretending not to watch. "You promised me. You said once the divorce was done we'd be together. But you're here with her playing the devoted husband, and you won't even answer my calls. I'm not some secret you can just ignore when it's inconvenient." Tilda watched Jason's face cycle through panic, calculation, and resignation. This was a man losing control of a situation he'd thought he was managing. This was chaos he hadn't invited, couldn't control, and had no strategy for handling. "Mom, is everything all right?" A security guard had appeared, drawn by the commotion. "Are you a guest at this event?" Sophia faltered, seeming to realize for the first time that she was making a scene. "I need to talk to Jason Washington. It's important. It's about— She's an old friend who's had too much to drink," Jason said quickly, his professional mask cracking at the edges. "I'll help her get a cab. Just give me a minute." But Tilda stepped forward, her voice calm and clear in the sudden hush. "Actually, Sophia isn't just an old friend. Are you, Sophia? Why don't you tell everyone why you're really here? What promises Jason made you?" "Tilda, don't," Jason hissed, but there was no authority in his voice now, just desperation. Sophia looked at Tilda for the first time, and something in her expression shifted from anger to confusion to dawning horror as she seemed to finally understand what she'd walked into. "You're his wife. Jason said you didn't come to these things. He said you hated company events. He says a lot of things, doesn't he? Tilda's voice was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Let me guess, he told you he was leaving me, that once the divorce went through, you'd be together, that he just needed a little more time to get everything in order. He probably mentioned a beach house, maybe talked about the properties we own, how you'd share them once he got his settlement. Sophia's face went white. Around them, the crowd had grown, a semicircle of Jason's colleagues and their spouses watching the spectacle with the horrified fascination of people witnessing a career implode. How did you? Sophia started. Because I'm not blind, I'm not stupid, and unlike you, I've had 12 years to learn how Jason lies. Tilda turned to address the growing audience, her voice steady and clear. For anyone wondering, yes, my husband has been having an affair. Yes, he's been planning to divorce me to be with her. And yes, he's been trying to claim half of my inheritance in the process. I'm only clarifying this now because Sophia was brave enough to show up and tell the truth. Thank you for that, Sophia. Really, I couldn't have asked for better timing. Mrs. Washington, I didn't know. Sophia stammered, tears starting to stream down her face. He said you were separated, that you'd agreed to the divorce, that it was just paperwork. Of course he did. Tilda's voice was still gentle. It's much easier to sleep with someone when they think they're not destroying a marriage, when they think they're the happy ending instead of the affair. Jason grabbed Tilda's arm, his control finally shattering. Stop. Just stop talking. You're humiliating me. No. Tilda pulled her arm free and her voice went cold. You're humiliating yourself. I'm just standing here while you face the consequences of decisions you made. She came here because you've been avoiding her calls, because your promises are starting to sound hollow, because the divorce isn't going the way you told her it would. This isn't my doing, Jason. This is your chaos, your lie spiraling out of control, your mistress who finally got desperate enough to force your hand in public. Mark Jenkins, whom Tilda recognized from Jason's office stories, stepped forward with a confused expression. Jason, what's going on? Is this for real? Before Jason could answer, his boss, a silver-haired man Tilda had met at company picnics, appeared at the edge of the crowd, his expression grave. Jason, my office, Monday morning, 8 sharp. Don't be late. The dismissal in his tone was clear. This wasn't going to be a conversation. This was going to be a termination. Sophia had started crying in earnest now, her hand over her mouth as she seemed to finally understand the magnitude of what she'd done. The security guard was moving toward her, clearly intending to escort her out, when Tilda spoke again. Let her stay. Tilda looked at Sophia directly. You came all this way to talk to Jason. Here's your chance. Tell him what you came to say. Tell him why you've been calling. Tell him whatever was so important it couldn't wait. I'm pregnant, Sophia whispered, and the words dropped into the silent ballroom like a bomb. 8 weeks. I came to tell you I'm pregnant, Jason, and you won't answer my calls. You won't see me. It's like I don't exist anymore. Jason's face went grey. Around them, the whispers exploded into open conversation. Shocked exclamations, questions, someone laughing inappropriately at the absurdity of it all. Tilda felt nothing but cold vindication. She hadn't orchestrated this. Jason's carefully managed double life had simply collapsed under its own weight, aided by a desperate woman he'd used and discarded. I'll call you a car, Tilda said to Sophia quietly. You should go home, sober up, figure out what you want to do next. But Sophia, stop calling him. Stop waiting for him to choose you. He's not capable of choosing anyone but himself. She walked away, leaving Jason frozen in the center of a crowd of colleagues who would never look at him the same way. Behind her, she heard his voice rising in explanations that nobody wanted to hear, heard his boss repeat the Monday morning summons, heard the security guard finally guiding Sophia toward the exit. In the lobby, Tilda ordered a car for Sophia on her phone, then waited until the other woman stumbled out, mascara streaked and broken. Their eyes met for just a moment, 2 women destroyed by the same man in different ways, and then Sophia was gone. Jason found her in the lobby 10 minutes later, his face furious and desperate and humiliated all at once. You let her destroy me. You could have stopped her. You could have... I could have what? Lied for you. Protected you from the consequences of your own choices. She came here because you ignored her calls. She told everyone about the affair because you've been avoiding her. She announced the pregnancy because you've been pretending she doesn't exist. I didn't destroy you, Jason. You destroyed yourself by trying to manage 2 women and a divorce and a fraud scheme all at the same time. You just finally ran out of hands to juggle with. Henderson said you'd be vindictive. I didn't believe him. This wasn't vindictive. This was just gravity. What goes up eventually comes down. You built a house of cards, and tonight it fell. That's not vindictiveness, that's physics. They left within minutes, Jason's career in ruins, Sophia's revelation hanging over them both. The ride home was silent except for Jason's ragged breathing, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. When they pulled into the driveway, he didn't move, just sat there, staring straight ahead at the wreckage of everything he'd built. I never wanted her there. I told her to stay away. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. No, it was supposed to happen quietly, in a lawyer's office, with you walking away with half my assets and Sophia waiting in some apartment for you to arrive with the money. But you don't get to choose how your lies unravel, Jason. You only get to choose whether you tell them in the first place. Tilda opened her door. Monday morning, your boss is going to fire you, not because Sophia showed up, not because of me, because you violated company policy, because you compromised your professional integrity, because you brought scandal to the firm. That's on you. Every bit of it. Own it. She walked into the house and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She hadn't needed to destroy Jason. She'd simply needed to wait for him to destroy himself. And tonight, aided by the woman he'd used and abandoned, he'd done exactly that. They wanted me to be the hysterical wife. Instead, I smiled and watched while his lies caught fire and walked away while his world burned behind me. Chapter 7. The Mother's Choice. Dorothy Washington's car appeared in Tilda's driveway at sunrise, packed so full that clothes pressed against the back window like desperate faces. Tilda watched from the kitchen window as her mother-in-law emerged with 2 suitcases and the kind of determined expression that meant something fundamental had shifted in the universe. Jason was still asleep upstairs, having passed out after drinking half a bottle of whiskey and alternating between rage and self-pity following the gala disaster. Tilda had slept in the guest room, listening to him destroy his own peace while she'd finally felt something close to rest. "Dorothy?" Tilda opened the door, genuinely surprised. "What's going on?" "I'm moving in with you." Dorothy set down her suitcases with finality. "Temporarily, until this mess gets sorted. I left Vincent this morning, told him I'm done enabling our son's behavior by staying silent." "You left Jason's father?" "Should have done it 30 years ago." Dorothy's voice was steel wrapped in exhaustion. "When he cheated on me the first time, the second, the third. But I stayed because I thought that's what good wives did, that's what good mothers did. I taught Jason that betrayal was forgivable, that women should be patient and understanding, that maintaining the appearance of marriage mattered more than the reality of love. I taught him wrong, and you're paying the price for my lessons." Tilda pulled her inside, stunned. She'd expected Dorothy to distance herself, maybe take Jason's side out of maternal loyalty. This was something else entirely, a complete repudiation of everything Dorothy had modeled for her son. "Dorothy, you don't have to do this. This isn't your battle." "Yes, it is. I raised him. I showed him through my own life that women are disposable, that they'll forgive anything, that their pain doesn't matter as long as the marriage looks good from the outside. And now you're paying the price for my lessons." Dorothy's eyes were fierce. "I'm here because someone should have stood up for me when I was your age. Since no one did, I'm standing up for you now. And I'm showing Jason what I should have shown his father decades ago. There are consequences for treating women like they're less than human." The sound of Jason coming downstairs made them both turn. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking rough and disoriented, and stopped dead when he saw his mother's suitcases. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, his face carrying the weight of everything he'd lost in one evening. Mom, what are you doing here? I'm staying with Tilda for a while. Your father and I are separating. Actually, we're divorcing. I filed papers this morning before I came here. What? Jason moved into the room, confusion replacing his hangover. Why? What happened? Did he do something? He did everything, for 40 years. And I let him, just like you did everything to Tilda, thinking she'd let you too. Dorothy crossed her arms, her stance defensive but unwavering. Watching you treat Tilda exactly the way your father treated me happened, realizing I enabled a man who thinks love is something you perform while planning your exit strategy happened. Seeing you at that gala, your wife humiliated because you brought your mistress as someone else's date, that happened. I'm done, Jason, with your father and with pretending you're anything other than a liar and a cheat who learned from the best. That's not fair. You don't know the whole story. Tilda has been protecting herself. Dorothy's voice cut like a blade, planning for a future after you destroy her, refusing to be the victim you expected her to be. Those are called survival instincts, Jason. Women develop them when the men they love prove to be untrustworthy. You're my mother. You're supposed to be on my side. I was on your side when you needed help with college. When you wanted to propose to Tilda but couldn't afford the ring she deserved, I gave you my mother's diamond. When you were struggling at work, I talked you up to everyone I knew. When you and Tilda had that rough patch 5 years ago, I counseled patience and understanding. I've been on your side your entire life, Jason, but this, what you've done to this woman who loved you, I can't be on your side when you're fundamentally morally wrong. So you're choosing her over me, your son. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. I'm choosing right over wrong. If that means I'm choosing her over you, maybe you should ask yourself why those two things are the same. Maybe you should ask yourself what kind of man makes his mother choose between her son and her conscience. This is insane. Both of you are insane. Jason's voice rose, his control slipping. She destroyed my career last night, humiliated me in front of everyone I work with, made Sophia look like a fool, and you're taking her side? She told the truth. That's not destruction, that's exposure. The difference matters. Dorothy moved toward him, and for a moment, Tilda saw the mother in her warring with the woman she was becoming. I love you. You're my son, and nothing will change that. But loving someone doesn't mean lying for them. It doesn't mean enabling their worst behavior. It doesn't mean choosing them when they're objectively wrong. Then what's the point of being family? Jason's voice cracked. What's the point of love if it's conditional? If you'll abandon me the second things get hard? Love isn't what you think it is. Dorothy's voice softened, and Tilda saw decades of pain and regret in her expression. I thought love meant staying quiet when your father came home smelling like another woman's perfume. I thought love meant accepting his lies because divorce was shameful. I thought love meant protecting my son from consequences because mothers should always shield their children. But that wasn't love, Jason. That was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of judgment. Fear of facing the truth that my marriage was built on sand and my silence was digging it deeper. So what? You're leaving Dad because I screwed up? How is that fair to him? I'm leaving your father because watching you became a mirror I couldn't avoid anymore. I saw the man I raised in you, and I saw the man I married in your father, and I finally understood that I created this cycle. By staying silent, by accepting betrayal as normal, by teaching you that women will tolerate anything if you're just patient enough. I made you this way, and the only way to break the cycle is to stop participating in it. Jason looked between them, his face working through something that might have been genuine emotion or just the realization that his support system was collapsing in real time. Fine. You want to choose her. Choose her. But don't come crying to me when you realize she's not the victim you think she is. Don't come back when you see what she's really capable of. What is she really capable of? Dorothy challenged. Protecting herself? Planning ahead? Refusing to be robbed by the man she trusted? Those aren't crimes, Jason. Those are survival skills. And if you weren't so busy playing victim, you'd realize she's been defending herself against an attack you started months ago. I'm going to my apartment, Jason said, grabbing his keys from the counter. You don't have an apartment, Tilda said quietly from where she'd been standing, letting Dorothy fight this battle. You're suspended from work, remember? No income. The hotel you've been staying at requires payment. Your credit cards are near their limits because you've been supporting 2 households while planning your exit. Where exactly do you think you're going? Then I'll go to Sophia's. Will you? Tilda pulled out her phone, showed him a screenshot from late last night. She blocked your number after what happened at the gala, blocked you on everything. Mark confronted her about the affair, and she threw you under the bus to save face, told him you manipulated her, lied about your marriage status, made promises you couldn't keep. She figured out what your promises are worth, Jason. She finally understood that a man who'd destroy his wife would eventually destroy her too. Jason stared at the screen, and Tilda watched something fundamental break behind his eyes. He'd been counting on Sophia as his fallback, his safety net, his proof that leaving Tilda was worth it. Now that was gone too. Then I'll go to a motel, anywhere that's not here. That's probably wise, Dorothy said softly, because seeing you right now hurts too much. Not because you failed, because you chose to fail. Because you had a good woman, a good life, and you decided it wasn't enough. You wanted more, and in trying to take it, you lost everything. Jason left without another word, the front door closing with a finality that seemed to echo through the house. Dorothy sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking every one of her years. He's my son, and I love him, she said quietly. But loving someone doesn't mean lying for them. It doesn't mean pretending they're right when they're wrong. I know. Tilda sat beside her, taking her hand. Thank you for being here. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. Because 35 years ago, I was sitting where you are now. First time I found evidence of Vincent's affair, pregnant with Jason, terrified and betrayed and so alone. My own mother told me to stay quiet, to keep the family together, that men sometimes stray, but it doesn't mean anything. No one stood up for me. No one chose me over the comfortable lie of keeping the family intact. I've regretted that silence every day since. I won't let Jason do to you what Vincent did to me while I watched and said nothing. What was it like? Tilda asked softly. Staying with someone who betrayed you? Lonely. Even when he was in the same room, I was lonely. The man I married was gone, and I was living with a stranger who wore his face, who knew my weaknesses, who'd promised forever and delivered conditional love with an expiration date. Dorothy's voice caught. That's not a life, Tilda. That's just survival. You deserve more than survival. You deserve someone who chooses you every day, not someone who calculates your worth and finds you wanting. They sat together as morning light filled the kitchen, 2 women from different generations bound by the same lesson learned too late and just in time. Outside, they could hear Jason's car start and pull away, and Tilda wondered where he'd go, what he'd do now that every support structure had collapsed around him. She didn't feel triumph. She felt something closer to tired relief, the exhaustion of a marathon runner who'd finally crossed the finish line, not because they wanted glory, but because stopping meant losing everything. Do you think he'll learn anything from this? Tilda asked. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Some men learn. Some men just get bitter. But either way, that's his journey now, not yours. You've done what you needed to do to protect yourself. The rest is up to him. That afternoon, Vincent called Tilda's phone, not Dorothy's. His voice was tight with anger and desperation. Tell my wife to come home. Tell her she's making a mistake. Tell her our marriage is none of Jason's business. Your marriage became Jason's business the day you taught him that betrayal was acceptable, Tilda said calmly. Dorothy isn't here because of your son. She's here because of you, because she finally realized that staying silent about your behavior taught Jason to expect the same silence from his wife. This is about 40 years of choices, not one bad night. You turned her against me. No, You did that yourself, one affair at a time. I just happened to be here when she finally decided enough was enough. If you want her back, earn her back. But that's between you and Dorothy. I'm not your marriage counselor." She hung up and blocked his number. Dorothy, watching from the living room, smiled grimly. "Thank you for that. He's going to be furious." "Good. Let him be furious. Let him feel a fraction of what you felt for 40 years. Maybe it'll teach him something. Probably not, but maybe." They spent the evening cooking dinner together, talking about Dorothy's plans, apartment hunting, meeting with a divorce attorney, figuring out finances after 40 years of joint accounts. It was practical, focused, forward-looking. Neither of them mentioned Jason, though he hung in the air between them like smoke. "His mother chose me because I reminded her of who she used to be, before a man taught her that love was something you survived instead of celebrated." Chapter 8. The Confrontation. The pounding on Tilda's door came at 11 at night, violent enough that Dorothy woke up and came downstairs in her robe, alarmed. Tilda was still awake, working on her laptop in the kitchen, finalizing the sale of another property and reviewing Marcus's preparation for the upcoming settlement negotiations with Henderson. "Don't answer it," Dorothy said, her hand on Tilda's shoulder. But Tilda had seen the car in the driveway through the window. Not Jason's rental, but a silver sedan she didn't recognize. She opened the door with the chain still latched and found Sophia Reynolds on her porch, drunk and furious and crying all at once. "You destroyed him," Sophia slurred, pounding on the door again. "Everything was fine until you had to be vindictive. You couldn't just let him go. You had to ruin everything." Tilda exchanged a glance with Dorothy, then unlatched the chain. "You should come inside before you wake the whole neighborhood." Sophia stumbled in, and up close, she looked worse than Jason had after the gala. Her makeup was smeared, her expensive dress rumpled, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold her purse. There was a desperation in her eyes that Tilda recognized, the look of someone who'd bet everything on the wrong hand and was just now realizing it. "Sit down," Tilda said, not unkindly. "I'll make coffee." "I don't want your coffee. I want you to fix what you did." "What did I do exactly?" Tilda filled the coffee maker anyway, her movements calm and deliberate. Dorothy hovered near the kitchen doorway, protective but silent. "You ruined everything. Jason was supposed to leave you. We were supposed to be together. We were supposed to have the beach house and the life he promised me. And instead he's broke and desperate and hiding from creditors, and he won't even answer my calls even though I've been trying to reach him for weeks. He can't answer your calls. You filed a restraining order against him and blocked him on everything." "Because he lied." Sophia's voice broke on the word. "About everything, about you, about the money, about the properties. He said you were controlling and abusive and wealthy. He said you kept him from being happy, that you manipulated him into staying. He said once the divorce went through, we'd be set for life with your money. And now there's nothing. No beach house because you sold it before he could claim it. No properties because they were never his. No money because he never had any. Just nothing. He used me." Tilda set a mug of coffee in front of Sophia and sat down across from her, studying the woman who'd been her enemy for months. Up close, without the armor of anger, Sophia looked young and lost and profoundly deceived. "When did you figure out he was lying?" "After the gala. After you exposed everything in front of everyone, and I went home humiliated, and Mark broke up with me, and I was alone, and I started looking things up. Property records, court documents, all of it. None of it was in Jason's name. Everything he said we'd have together was yours, always was. And he knew it. He knew he was promising me things that didn't exist." Sophia's hands wrapped around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I quit my job for him. I moved across the country because he said we had a future. I left my family, my friends, everything, because he said we were building something real. And now I'm here, alone, with nothing." "Why did you file the restraining order if you're trying to call him?" Tilda asked, genuinely curious. "Because I was angry. Because I felt like an idiot. Because he made me look like a fool in front of everyone." Sophia looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "But mostly because I'm pregnant. And when I told him, he said I was lying, said I was trying to trap him, said the baby probably wasn't even his, and I realized that the man I thought I loved never existed. He was just a character Jason played to get what he wanted. The words landed like a bomb in the quiet kitchen. Dorothy gasped. Tilda went very still. How far along? 8 weeks, maybe 9, from Miami, the conference that was supposed to be our trial run for living together. Sophia laughed bitterly, a sound like breaking glass. He was so excited when we were there, talked about baby names, about how perfect the timing was, about starting fresh with a family, and now he acts like I'm some stranger trying to ruin his life. Tilda's mind was working through the timeline. 8 or 9 weeks meant Sophia got pregnant right around the same time Tilda had terminated her own pregnancy. Jason had gotten both women pregnant within weeks of each other while planning to divorce Tilda and steal her assets. The calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. "What do you want from me?" Tilda asked finally. "Why are you here?" "I don't know." Sophia's voice was small, lost. "I have no job. My family won't talk to me because I moved away for a man they told me not to trust. My savings are almost gone because I've been living off what I made before I quit. And I'm pregnant with a baby whose father is pretending we never happened, and I don't know what to do." Tilda looked at Dorothy, who nodded slightly, giving silent permission for what Tilda was about to offer. She pulled out her checkbook and wrote quickly, her handwriting steady despite the surreal nature of the moment. "This is $10,000, Tilda said, sliding the check across the table. "It's enough for an abortion if that's what you choose. It's enough for prenatal care and rent deposit and groceries if you choose to keep the baby. It's enough to fly home to your family and start over if you choose to leave. I don't care what you do with it. But whatever you decide, it should be your choice, not something Jason forces you into through abandonment or manipulation." Sophia stared at the check like it might disappear. "Why would you help me? I slept with your husband. I helped him try to destroy you. I called you names. I told you to give him up. Why would you give me money?" "Because he turned you into a weapon against me, and weapons don't choose their targets. You believed his lies because he's good at lying. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. What matters now is what you do next. Do you keep believing his version of events, or do you start writing your own story?" "He said you were cold, heartless, vindictive and manipulative. I am vindictive. I absolutely am, but not to you. You're not my enemy, Sophia. You're another woman who believed a man when he promised to be someone he wasn't. That's not a crime. That's just a mistake, a painful, expensive mistake, but still just a mistake." Sophia took the check with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "I don't understand you." "You don't have to. But if you're smart, you'll use that money to build a life that doesn't include men who make you smaller, men who lie to their wives and their girlfriends with the same mouth, men who see women as resources to exploit instead of people to respect." "If Jason's lawyers contact me about the divorce, what should I say?" Sophia asked quietly. "About the affair and what he promised me?" "Tell them the truth, whatever that truth is for you. But Sophia, you don't owe me anything. You don't owe Jason anything. You owe yourself honesty and the courage to live it. That's all." Sophia stood unsteadily, clutching the check like a lifeline. At the door she turned back. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For believing him. For calling you. For all of it." "I know. But sorry doesn't change what happened. It just acknowledges that it did. What changes things is what you do tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. That's where healing lives. In the 1,000 small choices to be better than yesterday." After Sophia left, Dorothy made tea and they sat together in the kitchen, processing what had just happened. The house felt different now, less like a battlefield and more like a shelter, a place where wounded women came to figure out their next steps. "You gave her money," Dorothy said finally. "The woman who tried to steal your husband." "I gave her a choice. The choice no one gave me when I found out I was pregnant with Jason's child while he was planning to leave me. The choice I wish someone had given you when you were young and scared and alone with a cheating husband and a baby on the way. Do you think she'll keep it? The baby? I don't know. But either way, it'll be her decision, not Jason's, not mine, hers. That's what matters. Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed Tilda's hand. You're a better person than I was at your age. Better than I am now, honestly. I'm not better. I'm just tired of watching women destroy themselves over men who aren't worth the damage. They sat in the quiet kitchen as midnight came and went. Two women who'd survived the same storm in different decades, and one woman somewhere out there in the night trying to decide what kind of future she wanted to build from the wreckage of broken promises. Tilda thought about the check she'd written, about the $10,000 that would either end a pregnancy or start a new life, or fund an escape to somewhere safer. She thought about how Jason would react when he found out, about how Henderson might try to use it against her, but mostly she thought about the look on Sophia's face when she realized that mercy could come from unexpected places, and that sometimes the person you thought was your enemy was just another woman trying to survive the same war. Sophia came as Tilda's enemy and left as evidence of Jason's pattern. Hell hath no fury like two women who finally compared notes, and sometimes mercy is the sharpest weapon. Chapter 9. The Final Offer. Marcus called 3 days after Sophia's visit with news that Jason's attorney requested a meeting, just lawyers, no clients present. Henderson wants to negotiate. He's feeling the pressure. But Tilda, something feels off about this. He sounded too confident. But when Tilda arrived at Marcus's office downtown, Jason's rental car was parked in the visitor lot, badly parked, one tire over the line like he'd been in too much hurry to care. She felt her stomach tighten with something between anticipation and dread. He insisted, Marcus said grimly when she questioned Jason's presence. Said he has a counteroffer that needs to be discussed directly. I told them this was irregular, but Henderson claimed Jason has new information that changes everything. We can leave if you're uncomfortable. No. Tilda straightened her jacket. Let's see what desperate looks like. Jason sat in the conference room, but he didn't look broken anymore. He looked angry. His suit was pressed, his hair neat, his eyes carrying a hardness that hadn't been there at their last meeting. Henderson sat beside him with an expression that was almost smug. Mrs. Washington, Henderson began, thank you for coming. My client has a revised proposal that we believe addresses certain oversights in our previous discussions. Oversights? Marcus frowned. Jason leaned forward, and Tilda saw the flash of teeth in what might have been a smile. I've been doing some research about that prenuptial agreement I signed 12 years ago. The ironclad prenuptial agreement, Henderson corrected, pulling out documents. Or so we thought. However, my client brought something interesting to my attention. The prenup was signed in California, where you were living at the time. But you've been residents of this state for 11 years. This state has different community property laws, and there's precedent for prenups being challenged when couples relocate to states with conflicting statutes. Tilda felt ice spread through her veins. Marcus grabbed the documents, reading quickly, his face growing concerned. Furthermore, Henderson continued, my client has documentation showing significant commingling of assets during the marriage. Joint bank accounts, credit cards in both names, insurance policies listing Mr. Washington as beneficiary. While the properties themselves remain in your name, there are arguments to be made about marital funds being used for maintenance and improvements. We already addressed this, Marcus said sharply. Every improvement was documented, paid for by contractors Mrs. Washington hired with inherited funds. Except for the beach house, Jason said quietly. The one you already sold, the one where I coordinated the insurance policy, reviewed contractor bids, handled tenant complaints for 2 years when it was a rental. I have emails, Tilda, forwarded messages showing me acting as property manager. That's contribution. That's participation in marital assets. You sold that property for $30,000 under market value, Henderson added, in what appears to be a rushed sale designed to prevent my client from claiming his rightful share. That's asset dissipation. The court takes a very dim view of spouses who deliberately devalue marital property to spite their partner. Tilda's mind was racing. The beach house sale had been strategic, necessary, but Henderson was twisting it into evidence of bad faith. Here's our revised offer. Henderson slid papers across the table. We're no longer asking for 60-40. We're asking for 50-50 on the remaining properties, plus compensation for the beach house sale that excluded Mr. Washington from his share. Total value, approximately $800,000. That's insane, Marcus said. You have no legal basis. We have precedent, Henderson interrupted. Chen versus Chen decided in this state 3 years ago. Wife inherited property, husband contributed to maintenance, court awarded 40% to husband despite prenup because of commingling and contribution. Rodriguez versus Rodriguez, wife sold inherited property during divorce proceedings, court ordered her to compensate husband for his share. We have case law, Mr. Reynolds, strong case law. Tilda looked at Jason, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. He wasn't desperate anymore. He was confident. He'd been studying, preparing, finding angles while she thought she'd already won. You think you're so smart, Jason said, his voice low. You thought you had it all figured out. Sell the properties, protect your inheritance, leave me with nothing. But you forgot something, Tilda. I'm not stupid. I've been building a life for 12 years, while you thought you were the only one planning ahead. Marcus pulled out his own folder, thicker than Henderson's. Are you finished grandstanding? Because I'd like to address these supposed precedents. By all means, Henderson said, though something in his expression suggested he was still confident. Chen versus Chen, Marcus began. Yes, the husband got 40%. Do you know why? Because the wife used marital income, his income, to make improvements. The property was purchased with inheritance, but renovated with joint marital funds. Every contractor payment for Mrs. Washington's properties came from her separate inheritance accounts. I have 12 years of bank records proving it. Not $1 of marital income touched those properties. Henderson's confidence wavered slightly. The emails showing Mr. Washington's involvement. Forwarding emails isn't contribution, Marcus interrupted. Mrs. Washington made the decisions, signed the checks, hired the contractors. Mr. Washington occasionally forwarded her an email. That's not property management. What about Rodriguez? Jason pressed. Rodriguez is even less applicable, Marcus said. In that case, the wife sold inherited property and used the proceeds to buy a new home, deliberately excluding her husband from the new asset. That's asset dissipation. Mrs. Washington sold her beach house and the money went into her separate inheritance account, where it's always been. She sold it before divorce proceedings began, which means there were no proceedings to dissipate assets from. Tilda felt relief starting to build. Marcus was good, really good. However, Henderson said, and his smile returned, there's one thing we haven't discussed yet, something that happened very recently. Tell me, Mrs. Washington, have you had any contact with Sophia Reynolds in the past week? Tilda's blood went cold. Jason was watching her face, and she knew the moment he saw her reaction that they'd found their leverage. We've also taken the liberty of contacting Ms. Reynolds, Henderson continued, pulling out more documents. She's agreed to provide testimony that 3 days ago you paid her $10,000 and asked her not to testify about the affair or Mr. Washington's promises regarding marital assets. That's witness tampering, Mrs. Washington, attempting to obstruct justice by paying off a material witness in divorce proceedings. That was humanitarian aid to a pregnant woman, Marcus said, but Tilda could hear the concern in his voice. Not witness tampering. Frame it however you want. It's still suspicious, Henderson said. A woman gives money to her husband's pregnant girlfriend right before settlement negotiations? That plays badly, Mr. Reynolds, very badly, especially when that same girlfriend can testify that Mr. Washington promised her specific properties Mrs. Washington then sold before he could claim them. It starts to look like a coordinated effort to hide assets and silence witnesses. This is a bluff, Tilda said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Henderson pulled out printed text messages. Ms. Reynolds kept records of every promise Mr. Washington made, texts about the beach house, emails about moving in together after the divorce, messages discussing which properties would become theirs. It's all documented. And now you've paid her to potentially change her story. That's not just bad optics. That's potential criminal liability. Marcus leaned over to whisper with Tilda. He's twisting the timeline, but he's not wrong about how it looks. The payment to Sophia could be painted as an attempt to influence her testimony. Combined with the beach house sale, Henderson can build a narrative of you systematically undermining Jason's claims. What are you proposing? Tilda asked Henderson directly. We're proposing a settlement, Henderson said. $400,000, paid over 3 years. In exchange, we don't pursue the asset dissipation claim. We don't call Sophia to testify about the payment. We don't drag this through a trial that will cost you more in legal fees than you'd lose in settlement. We end this quietly, professionally, and everyone walks away with something. You mean Jason walks away with money he didn't earn and doesn't deserve, Tilda said. I mean, I walk away with compensation for 12 years of supporting your property management, contributing to maintenance decisions, and being excluded from financial decisions about assets I helped maintain, Jason countered. You want to play legal games, Tilda? I've learned the rules. Henderson's been teaching me, and we've built a case that will cost you a fortune to fight even if you win. Marcus pulled Tilda aside, his voice low. He's not wrong about the cost. Chen and Rodriguez are real precedents, even if they don't perfectly apply. The commingling argument is weak, but the beach house sale could be painted as asset dissipation, and the Sophia payment looks terrible. We can fight this, but it'll take months and cost over $100,000 in legal fees. There's a chance we could lose. I don't want to give him anything, Tilda said. I know. But sometimes the win is in minimizing losses. $400,000 over 3 years is manageable. It's less than half of what they originally wanted, and it ends this now, rather than dragging it through courts for a year. Tilda looked at Jason across the room. He'd been beaten, humiliated, destroyed professionally and socially, and somehow he'd gotten back up and learned to fight smarter. There was something almost impressive about it, even as she hated him for it. $200,000, Tilda said. Paid over 2 years, that's my counteroffer. $600,000, Jason said immediately. Paid over 3 years. They negotiated for 2 hours, back and forth, Henderson and Marcus arguing case law while Tilda and Jason stared at each other across the table. Finally, they settled on $400,000 over 3 years. It wasn't the complete victory she'd wanted, but it wasn't the total defeat Jason had been facing either. They'd both won and lost in equal measure. Why? Tilda asked as they signed the documents. Why keep fighting when you'd already lost everything? Because losing everything means you have nothing left to fear, Jason said quietly. You took my job, my reputation, my mother, my relationship with Sophia. You left me with nothing but the will to fight back. So I learned, I studied, I found angles, because what else did I have to do with my time? You could have accepted responsibility. I did. I accepted that I destroyed my own life. But that doesn't mean I have to let you walk away untouched while I burn alone. He looked at her with something that might have been sadness. You wanted me to pay for what I did. Congratulations. I'm paying. But so are you. After they left, Marcus put a hand on Tilda's shoulder. $400,000 is still less than half of what you have. You won, Tilda. Not as completely as we'd hoped, but you won. It doesn't feel like winning. That's because real life doesn't have clean victories. It has compromises. You protected most of your assets, maintained your dignity, and walked away from a man who tried to destroy you. That's as close to winning as divorce gets. That night, Tilda sat in her house still mostly hers, and thought about Jason's final words. She'd wanted him to pay, and he was paying, but the payment came with a cost to her too. $400,000, and the knowledge that even broken men can learn to fight back. She opened her laptop and transferred the first installment to the account Henderson had specified. $133,000 gone with a few keystrokes. It hurt, but it was survivable. And survival, she was learning, was its own kind of victory. Jason wanted mercy. Tilda offered justice. They both learned that the line between the two costs more than either expected. But Tilda walked away with her empire mostly intact, and sometimes that has to be enough. Chapter 10. The Architect. The courthouse was colder than Tilda remembered, all marble and echoes and the weight of endings made official. She sat beside Marcus in the hallway outside the courtroom, Dorothy on her other side, watching other people's tragedies unfold through closed doors while they waited for their turn. Jason arrived alone, his attorney beside him, but no family, no friends, no Sophia. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weeks since their last meeting, and when his eyes met Tilda's across the hallway, she saw only resignation. Henderson looked tired, like a man who'd fought hard for a losing cause and knew it. The hearing itself was mercifully brief. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics, reviewed the settlement agreement with the thoroughness of someone who'd seen too many couples destroy each other over assets that didn't matter. The court finds that the marriage of Jason Washington and Tilda Washington is irretrievably broken, she intoned, her voice carrying the weight of finality. Per the settlement agreement, all properties acquired before marriage or through inheritance remain with Mrs. Washington. Mr. Washington retains no claim to said properties or accounts. The prenuptial agreement executed 12 years ago is hereby upheld in full. Both parties are released from marital obligations as of today's date. It was over. 12 years reduced to legal language and signatures on documents. The judge looked at them over her reading glasses, and Tilda thought she saw something like sympathy in the older woman's eyes. "I'm going to add something off the record," the judge said quietly. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen couples tear each other apart over houses and cars and grudges that don't mean anything in the end. This case was different. Mrs. Washington, you protected yourself methodically and legally. Mr. Washington, you attempted fraud and failed. Let that be the lesson you both take from this. One of you planned to destroy, the other planned to defend. The outcome was inevitable." Outside the courthouse, Jason caught Tilda's arm as she descended the steps. Not grabbing this time, just touching, a ghost of the connection they'd once shared. Dorothy tensed beside her, but Tilda raised a hand to indicate it was all right. "Was any of it real?" Jason asked, his voice rough. "Did you ever actually love me?" Tilda looked at him, really looked, searching for any remnant of the man who'd proposed to her on a bridge in Paris, who'd promised her forever while meaning only until something better came along. "Every moment until the second you decided I was worth less than what I could give you," she said. "That's when you stopped being my husband and became just another man who thought I wouldn't notice, just another man who underestimated me. I'm sorry. For whatever that's worth now. It's worth what it cost you to say it, which is nothing, Jason. Sorry is free. Respect costs everything, and you were never willing to pay that price." She paused, then decided to give him one last truth. "I didn't sign the affidavit. Henderson will tell you. The termination stands as is. You'll have to rebuild from that." His face went pale. "Why? You won. You got everything. Why twist the knife? Because consequences teach what apologies never can. Because some bridges need to burn completely so you can't go back. Because you need to understand that actions have weight, and that weight doesn't disappear just because you're sorry after you get caught." She turned to go, then looked back one more time. "And Jason, Sophia's pregnant. The baby's yours. Whether you choose to be a father to that child or another man who walks away is up to you, but I thought you should know that one more consequence is coming, whether you're ready for it or not." She walked away, Dorothy beside her, Marcus trailing behind with his briefcase and the divorce papers that ended an era. Behind her, she heard Jason call out something, maybe her name, maybe just a wordless sound of anguish. But she didn't turn back. 6 months passed like water over stones, smoothing edges and wearing away the sharp parts of what had been. Tilda sold 2 more properties and bought a historic building downtown that she was converting into affordable housing, 20 units with rents set at 30% below market rate, something her grandmother would have approved of. Dorothy moved into her own apartment 3 blocks from Tilda's house, but came for dinner every week. Her divorce from Vincent finalized with the kind of quiet relief that came from long overdue endings. They'd become friends in a way that transcended their former relationship, bound by survival and the understanding that sometimes the hardest thing wasn't leaving, it was admitting you should have left decades ago. One afternoon, Tilda's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, habit from months of blocking Jason's attempts at contact. But something made her open it instead. The photo showed a baby girl, tiny and perfect, with dark eyes and Sophia's nose. The caption read, "Her name is Claire. Thank you for teaching me I deserved better than crumbs. She'll grow up knowing her mother chose herself first, so she could choose her daughter best. We moved home to Oregon. Fresh start. Hope you're well." Tilda stared at the photo for a long time, feeling something complicated and beautiful settle in her chest. Sophia had made her choice. She'd kept the baby and moved home, using the money Tilda gave her to start over somewhere Jason couldn't follow, somewhere that didn't carry the weight of his broken promises. She typed out a response. "She's beautiful. Be well, both of you." Then she deleted it. Some stories didn't need continuation. Some endings were complete in their simplicity. She deleted the message thread entirely, a kindness to all three of them. That evening, Dorothy came for dinner, and they sat on the back patio watching the sun set over the city. The house was quiet now, peaceful in a way it hadn't been in years. No lies humming beneath the surface, no betrayal waiting to explode, just two women who'd survived different versions of the same story. "Do you regret it?" Dorothy asked. "Being as ruthless as you were?" Tilda considered this, rolling her wine glass between her palms. "I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret refusing to be the woman he thought he'd married. Quiet, trusting, easy to exploit. I became who I needed to be to survive, and that's not something I can apologize for." "Good." Dorothy raised her glass. "Two women who refuse to lose." "Two women who refuse to lose," Tilda echoed. Later, alone in her house, no longer theirs, Tilda stood in front of her grandmother's photograph in the hallway. The old woman stared back with eyes that had seen their share of hard choices, eyes that held no judgment for the path Tilda had walked. "I protected what you built," Tilda whispered to the photograph. "And I learned what you tried to teach me, that love without respect is just a prettier word for surrender. They ask me if I won. I tell them there were no winners, only a woman who refused to lose. And sometimes that's the same thing.